Andy Shea.
Paul Hutchinson.
Welcome to what I'm reliably informed is our 5th You podcast. So
thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it. I wondered whether I'd ever get to a position to drag you into the studio, and it looks like I achieved the goal.
I jumped.
You jumped?
Think.
Well, even better. Better. Really, really pleased to have you here, and we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, I think 2013.
Okay,
because it was straight out of uni.
Straight out of
that
uni.
You plucked me. Hand
I would have said felt sorry for you, but
sure.
Plucked, similar.
It's mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. So we're here today. We're just going to chat. We're just going to talk about all sorts of things. I've got to just tell everyone immediately before you get introduced properly and give everyone an inkling of who you are and how we know each other. I have been so ill the last week, and I am not very good at being ill. That's one thing I've reminded myself of. I'm really bad. So
just man-fluing it straight away.
Man-fluing it big time.
Yeah.
So I have, and there's a tie-in here, right? But I definitely have unrealistic expectations of my body, of my physicality. And whenever something comes along and kind of knocks that off track, I really get pissed off.
Yeah.
Like, I really get cheesed off because I'm like, why can't you do the things I'm expecting you to do?
Yeah.
And I wonder whether there's a link. You know, we're looking at the physical side, but equally, that's very true on the mental side as well, I think. But before we even go there, who are you?
That is a very big question, Paul. And I don't know if that I'm... Maybe we'll answer that by the end today.
I hope so.
But I'm not sure I know all the answer to all of that. I'm Andy. Obviously, we've known each other since 2013, so you know who I am. But for the sake of the listener, I am an incredibly average human being who don't take what I'm saying as any suggestion that I have a huge amount of intellect around the subjects that we're going to talk about today. I think that's good to get on the table straight away. I'm no expert in anything, but
I'd argue, and sorry to interrupt because I know you're on a flow, but I'd argue you're the expert in yourself.
Well, that's what I was about to say. So, you know, this is where almost 10 years that we've known each other, right? We almost know what we're going to say. I think the thing I am good at is self-reflection, and knowing, not always in the moment, but being able to understand who I am, where I'm going, where I want to go, and what has, if I'm on that track or not, and where what I need to do to get to the right place I want to go to, which I think is pertinent for the conversation that we're going to have today. So I know myself very well, and I think that's maybe I'm being biased, but I think that's a skill that not everyone has, for sure, and it's a skill that I find it really useful, and I think that's the reason that I've got to where I am in any. And again, I'm not hugely successful. I'm not, nothing hugely impressive about me at all. But I think I can put the success that I do have and the life that I do have down to my ability to look at myself and really know what matters to the core of me. And be able to adjust and make sure that I'm pointing towards that as often as I can. And again, pertinently for this conversation today that I think we're going to have is how I deal with things when I've not been on the right track, and then how I've noticed that, what the triggers there have been, and then how you reset and refocus and go again. So yeah, I'm Andy, and I know who I am. And hopefully after this, I'll be able to explain a little bit better.
That's awesome. So a couple of things. So You Understood, one of our key objectives is to try and bring more self-awareness and more self-consciousness to the individual so that they can make the right decisions for them. And one thing strikes me about what you've said. You seem, unlike lots of others that I've spoken to, you seem pretty certain that you're already aware of who you are and I guess what makes you tick, both ways, positively and negatively. And a part of that my perception of you and the embodiment of Andy Shea, both physically and mentally, is around, key goals, key objectives. And it's always been, again, this is outside looking in, so it might not be accurate, but you always seem to set pretty aggressive, certainly ambitious goals for yourself. And they can be from any kind of aspect of life, but you always have a high expectation of yourself. And then you talk about, when things don't quite go to plan, resetting. So I just wonder, the initial part of setting goals and objectives for yourself, I can see that both being a positive in your life and other people's lives, but also potentially a negative as well. So I just, talk about, if you can, some of the goals that you set yourself, and we can talk about Iceland. I'd love for you to talk about Iceland and share that journey, because that was an epic goal. Right? Yeah. That's not a normal goal, right? Yeah, and this is what I'm saying, right? So, but you are a goal setter. You're definitely a goal chaser, a goal setter. And when you set goals versus not having any, there's more of a likelihood of not hitting or attaining those goals. So kind of that's the positive and negative. I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, interestingly, on the last point you made there about when you set goals, you're more likely to achieve them. The interesting thing about my perception of my goal setting, I rarely actually hit them, but I don't really care. I mean, I care in the moment. I really care.
Yeah.
Because it hurts not hitting them. But you always still achieve something, right? You're always still, if you're not hitting that ultimate goal, you've usually still achieved something along the way, which is really powerful. And that's again, we will dig into Iceland, because I think it's a really cool story. But just holistically, the sheer act of setting that goal is sorry, not just setting the goal, but following that goal to its conclusion, whether that's success, whatever it's, well, actually, I'm going to rephrase that. Whether that is achieving the goal or falling short, you've been successful if you've followed a path to
because
try.
You've achieved some progress.
You've achieved some progress, but also you've tried.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that puts people off setting goals, whether they're big or small, can be that fear of failure, right?
Yep.
And I think everyone kind of intrinsically, that's really commonly talked about nowadays, the fear of failure and how that can stop people from doing things. And I would definitely have that fear, but specifically with what opened my eyes post Iceland, which you could look at as, and I did for a while, look at as a failure. I tried to do something that I'd never done before, and I tried to do something that. And this part isn't important, but I tried to do something that many people wouldn't try to do.
Yep.
And it's not important that people wouldn't try to do it, but it shows that it's a challenging endeavor. And just in saying that I'm going to do it, and by putting in the work to make myself able to do it,
yep,
I succeeded every single day along that path until the end of it. And that's really important to kind of shift your mindset from saying success is only if I achieve the ultimate outcome that I wanted.
Yeah.
No, success is putting your mind to something and trying. Yep. Success is every day that you try. That's success. There's a show by Ricky Gervais called Derek, which I'm not sure if you'll. It's from maybe it's from like 2000 early 2010s now, I think. And I won't go into the whole details, not for spoilers because it's been out for so long. I don't think I should matter now. But there's a bit near the end where one of the characters, who is a very downtrodden individual, but their life obviously hasn't been ideal, but they look at themselves and basically reflect on the fact that they say that I'm not a failure not because I didn't succeed, I'm a failure because I didn't try. And that's really important, I think. And just setting out to try and do something is amazing, whether you get the outcome that you want or not. And I think that's something that's really important. And the message that I'd want to send to a lot of people today, to say, don't worry about actually achieving the outcome. If you can, amazing. But just setting out to do something that you hadn't imagined before, however big or small, is success.
It's a really powerful message, that, and I'm with you. You know, I had a recent endeavour with my third marathon, and I smashed the PB that I had, and I went and talked about that as if I'd done that on the day, and somebody reminded me, you didn't do anything on the day. You did that PB in the 6 months. Every single day you got up and you ran in the rain and the wind and the cold. That's when you got your PB. Right?
Exactly.
And to your point, and I agree with you here as well, is even if I didn't get the PB, you know, the state of mind that I was in and the state of physical attributes I had compared to before I started was significantly better. So I'd achieved something, right? And it actually didn't matter at the end of it. So tell everyone about Iceland, because it was an epic challenge.
Yeah, so I am now, to set the whole scene, I'm now just past my 31st birthday.
Okay.
So
are you showing off now?
Yeah.
Thanks.
About my relative youth compared to you? Or
yes.
No? Okay, yeah. So when my joints creak, that's the old age. So I'm now just gone my 31st birthday. Throwback to February 2019. I was in Leeds with my dad and my brother, having dinner after watching Leeds United almost definitely win a game of football, because they always, as we know, they always win football matches. And I was 29, and I was thinking, I want to do something epic to prove to myself that I can set, as we just talked about, set my mind to something and achieve it.
Yep.
And I'd taken up cycling the year before, and I thought, there's something in there that says, let's go and cycle something mammoth. Let's go and do some kind of big event. And there's the obvious ones, like there's, you know, in the UK we've got John O'Groats Land's End, which is, I think it's about 900 miles. If you like, the kind of general one is about 900 miles, takes about 2 weeks ish. Could do that, but I've always loved Iceland. I went to Iceland in 2015, and it's an epic country, and also very foreboding. They can have, you know, as I now experienced, they can have snow and crazy storms in the middle of July. So I kind of turned to my dad and my brother and said, you know what, I'm going to go and cycle around Iceland. So bike with my tent, all my food, solo, no support, and get on my bike and cycle the 1,600 kilometers around Iceland as fast as I could without being super hungry. Because partially I wanted to see the country again. I didn't want to just like whiz around and not see it.
How many kilometers?
1,600 kilometers. So I think that's roughly 1,000 miles.
Yep.
1.6, I think the conversion is. Cyclists work in kilometers because they like it to seem further than it is. The bigger the number that you seem like you're going faster, you're going further. It's a great little hack. Yeah, exactly. So I said, I'm going to do this. And then obviously we know 2 months later, the world shut down because of COVID. And my plan was to do it and finish it on my 30th birthday, because this was a milestone birthday. I know that you would be upset by this, but I'd say I felt like I was getting old, and it's good to feel like I can still do something that's physically challenging. So anyway, that COVID delayed things by, I guess, a year and a half or so. But that whole time I was set on doing this. I'd been planning it. I knew exactly what my distances were and where I was going to be stopping. So essentially what I was doing was, Iceland has a ring road. So from Reykjavik, all the way around, it doesn't take into account the western fjords, but all the way around north coast, the west coast, south coast, it has a single ring road called the Route 1, which is the 1,600 kilometer road. And I was going to cycle that, and I was going to do it in 12 days of cycling, which is give or take 120 kilometers average a day. Some days were much bigger, some days were a little bit shorter. And up to that point, I decided to do this. I'd been cycling maybe 100 kilometers a week.
Yeah, cycling is definitely your thing, right?
For sure. Yeah, I was at that point of deciding to do that. I was a decent cyclist, but I knew I had to become a really good cyclist, especially to do it at the pace and consistency that I was doing on, cycling 100 kilometers. If you're even a relative novice cyclist, you can probably cycle 100 kilometers in a day and do it.
Okay.
You'll probably be a little bit slow, and the next day you'll really hurt. Next day you'll really hurt. So the challenge was really being able to do that day in, day out, in whatever weather, with an extra, I think at the end of the day, my bike weighed about 24 kilos. Usually when I'm cycling, my bike weighs 8 kilos. So I'm carrying an extra 16 kilos of gear on my bike, which weight, when you're cycling, weight is one of the primary limiting factors into how fast and how much effort you work. Wind is the other one that's really, really bad. So being able to cycle with that much extra weight day in, day out for 2 weeks with no break was going to be the big challenge in this. And that's what the training was going to be focused on, how I can make my legs recover day after day and feel like I can get up and go again. So yeah, it was really the longevity of this challenge that was the big thing. So I spent 2 years, I guess, on and off, because I wasn't so. When COVID first hit, my focus on it kind of slipped a little bit because I knew it wasn't going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
But the training was on reflection, the toughest part of it all. Getting the hours in to do that work.
As in finding the hours.
Finding the hours, yeah. Obviously, between work, family and relationship commitments, and my dog, there's not a huge amount of time. And cycling is, when you're talking about trying to do like 400, 500, 600 kilometers a week,
it's a lot of time.
Yeah, that's a lot of time. You're talking 20, 30 hours a week, which is really difficult to find for anyone. And that was, on reflection, probably the hardest part, getting into that training. But that's why what we've been talking about earlier. That's the success isn't just the outcome of the ultimate goal. It's the successes that I put in that work, and I trained and I planned, and I was able to get myself to the start line in a place where I was prepared to do it. Right, just like you with your marathon, you hit your ultimate goal, but it was, everyone recognizes that it was the work that you put in to get to that start line.
100%.
That was the hard part, right? That's where the real success lies. The timing slipped a little bit, but ultimately the plan was July of this year, over 12 days of cycling, and I would end up back in Reykjavik, capital of Iceland, Reykjavik, on my 31st birthday.
Okay.
So a few months back.
And what a way to finish, right?
I know, and that's kind of in your head when you're planning these things, and the expectation, like, oh, wouldn't it be so great to kind of cross that virtual finish line? Just turned 31 and greeted by all the Icelanders who were turning out to see me for some reason, or whoever wants to be involved to kind of cross that line, because again the physicality of it is tough, but I also always knew that the mental aspect was going to be really tough. So I was going to be cycling alone, 10 hours a day, maybe even longer, depending on how tough that day was, in possibly really adverse conditions, hoping for the best conditions possible, but you got to prepare for some really bad ones.
And there's often you kind of sit in one of two camps. Is you like your own company, or actually you don't like your own company? Do you fall into one of those, or do you cross over between the two?
I really love my own company. I'm very, very much a solo kind of person, but I also really love sharing experiences with people that I'm closest to. I have a very small group of core friends, and when I say very small, I mean 2. Right. I have 2 friends, but that suits me really. And it's really interesting that, as an aside, my brother has a massive group of friends. His wedding was huge, like 100 odd people. I'm like, I don't even know that many people in my life. Whereas I've always kept a very small group of friends, and been much more super happy just like on my own, even since I was a kid, just like, playing with my trucks and my tractors all by myself. No issue whatsoever. So there's definitely a a piece that says, you know, that was kind of a nice place for me to be, like in my own space, in my own head.
Cathartic, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it definitely was.
Yeah.
And it was for reasons I didn't expect it to be. It was challenging and cathartic. Again, for different reasons than what you'd expect from just going in. But I'm also not a great solo traveler. Okay. I get very anxious traveling. Timings of things, and just not, like, I hate being late and possibility of missing connections or missing a deadline for anything.
So is that about following the plan, really?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm a huge planner. So I said, like, I had every kilometer of this mapped out. So I knew exactly where every place, and this wasn't just because I was anxious about traveling, but to put in perspective the remoteness of Iceland, I would be stopping each night at a campsite or a hostel, maybe, if I was lucky.
Yep.
And on, let's say 7 days out of 10, so 70% of the time, I would not see another shop or place to stop until I then stopped for the night. Wow. So 10 hours, 100 kilometers of, you know, nothingness. If something goes wrong,
and it rolls off the tongue, that, right? But when you think about the reality of that's very unusual for anyone to experience here.
Yeah, and it's that was a daunting prospect, right? The prospect that if something goes wrong, and that's why you have to. That's part of the preparation, right? It goes into saying, I need to make sure that I can account for nearly every eventuality, and rely on myself, because you know, there are people in Iceland, and there are always cars driving past, but sometimes there might not be one for an hour or so, and it'd be one. So you can't say that I will definitely be able to get help or food or water is not so bad because they've got good streams and stuff, but you need to be prepared for today. I'm going to see nothing. I'm going to have to just rely on me and no one else. Which, as you say, in a place like Scotland, which you can think of as like really remote, which you can get remote in the Highlands, but not many people would experience that kind of expectation, right?
So I want to take you to the lowest point of that journey, and kind of make you relive it. And I want to make you relive it only because I find this fascinating myself, not in a morbid sense, but, you know, we all have days where we open our eyes, we're gaining consciousness after sleep or a lack of, and we find it really tough to motivate ourselves just to get out of bed and get on and do the normal things. So what I love hearing about is where there's these really adverse conditions, and, you know, there's barriers, there's challenges, there may be suffering, there may be pain, and yet somehow we elevate ourselves up above that and find it from somewhere. And I think there was a bit of that going on from what you've said previously at the lowest point of that journey. And I just want to delve into where that strength you think came from, how it manifested itself, and, you know, whether that was an unusual experience for you or whether that's actually something you knew you had in the kit bag, because it was tough, right? Yeah.
So there were a lot of low points. I think going into that challenge, you know, I was feeling really confident. I'd done all the physical work that I needed to do. I felt mentally stable. I felt super prepared in my kit and everything. So I think there's a few low points, but I think specifically, but if we take them in order, arrived in Iceland on the 9th of July. Ready to, and I had 2 days in Reykjavik to kind of set up and get ready to go, get mentally prepared, get the bike prepared, get all that kind of stuff prepared. I'd built my bike up, and I phoned my girlfriend. And had a bit of a chat with her, and she said that she could not be in a relationship with me anymore. So she basically broke up with me there and then, first date.
And you were in Iceland?
I was in Iceland, so 2,000 miles away. I don't know exactly how far it is. Preparing for what was going to be the toughest physical, mental challenge of my life, and then being told the person that I'd, you know, the person who I thought was the one, said, you know, they're not in it anymore.
So at that point, every bone in your body, I would imagine, just wanted to get back on the plane, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
You only think I'm in the wrong place just now.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
one place I need to be just now, and it's back fighting for that life that I had, and I was so close. I was so close
Really?
to just
Yeah.
I just I think I phoned my brother and told him what had happened.
Yeah.
I told him I'm coming home.
Yeah.
I think I must have said to him I'm coming home.
Yeah.
And paraphrase it, but he was like, no, you're not. There's no way that I'm letting you do the work that you've done and give up now. So definitely this support aspect from him and my friends, who is all just like, the reality is that this situation is shit. This is like an awful situation to be in. But what are you going to achieve from coming home?
Mm-hmm.
What if, like, you've worked so hard for this, and what's going to happen is going to happen. It sounds like it already has happened. The best way to deal with this is to do what you set out in your mind to do, and prove to everyone that you can do it, and prove to yourself that you can still do it. The other aspect is that, and I should have touched on this already, whilst I set out initially for this challenge to prove to myself that I can do something, I also did it to raise money for a charity called Tiny Changes.
Oh, great.
Which is a charity very, very close to my heart, which was set up by the family and friends of lead singer of Fine Rabbit, Scott Hutchison, who tragically died by suicide a number of years ago. And they were a really big, Scott's music was a really big part of my life. So I was raising money for them, and I'm really grateful to everyone who contributed to that, and we were able to raise £2,000 for them.
Done.
And the charity, thank you, and thanks to everyone who donated, because I didn't really do anything to that. It's everyone that donated money for that, and they their goal is to help, but their kind of tag is to help young minds in Scotland feel better. So it's specifically helping young people in Scotland with mental health issues.
Love it.
Obviously, it's close to what you guys are doing with You Understood. So there's another aspect of that I said, like, this isn't just for me now. This is for Tiny Changes. This is for all the people that Tiny Changes support, and this is for all the people who supported me for Tiny Changes. So there was a bit of this maybe isn't the best word to use. But there would be a bit of guilt there, right? If I'd said,
if you waved the white flag,
if I given already, because part of me thought, put myself in the shoes of people who are really going through mental crisis, right? And that's people I was trying to do this for, right?
Yep.
They can't just wave the white flag. They can't just say, "Oh, I'm having a bit of a bad day." No, you have to persevere. So, I wouldn't want to give up on something that people had supported me on, but also, what kind of message would I be sending if I just said, because I can, I'm gonna throw in the towel and come home because I have the resources to, I have the mindset to, all those privileges that you would take for granted. What message would I be sending if I did that?
Yeah.
So, whilst I was super close to coming home, really the reality was I had no option to come home. It just wasn't an option. I said it. I verbalized it, but it never really was on the table to do that because of the work that I'd put in and the message that I'd be sending. But interestingly, I wouldn't say that I'm a particularly mentally strong person. I can get knocked for six really, really quite easily. And I think you might attain to that. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I think everyone can see what I'm feeling and when I'm feeling it. And I can definitely very easily let that affect outcome. So I also wanted to show that actually, to myself, you can be more resilient than you think. So let's go out and, fuck it. Let's go out and prove that you can do this.
Yep.
To everyone. Not that anyone said I couldn't do it.
Yep.
But to myself, I can take these hits and I can suck them up, and I can do what I need to do when I got here. So I didn't get on the back of the plane, and I stayed in Iceland.
How do you, because a good few months have passed.
Yeah.
How do you reflect on that now, given that the time has passed? And again, I can't let you talk about your mental strength. I view you, for the record, I view you as an incredibly strong, resilient person. So it's interesting to hear your views on it. I think where you're thrown or where you have wobbles is actually back to that planning piece. So I think in your head, things have to be a certain way or work out in a certain way. And if they don't, then, that's where you have a wobble. But I don't think that's a reflection. Again, this is just outside looking in. I don't think that's a reflection of your resilience, your robustness, your mental strength. Far from it. I just think that's a reflection of your determination for things to go as planned, right? And there's a subtle difference there, I think. But sorry, I came away from I couldn't let without just giving you my perception of your mental strength, which I think is really, really good, really strong and solid. And I realise that might not be the case with the outside looking in. But in terms of reflection on those few months,
yeah.
So are you unequivocally delighted that you were tenacious, determined to see it out, or do you look at it in a different way now?
Oh no, I am. I already been so disappointed if I hadn't continued on with it. So yeah, beyond ecstatic that I, dug in and said, we're gonna do this, because it wasn't just the. So I go into Iceland or that time period with a lot of expectations of, as I've already talked, I'm thinking already the finish line in my head, crossing that line and like, yes, I'm finished, and the whole of Iceland applauds me and everyone's like, yeah, greatest guy in the world.
Isn't that amazing. The way it played out?
Not quite. Okay. So yeah, with all these expectations, and not just Iceland, but the expectations of I just got a promotion at work, so expectations of coming back and kind of hitting the ground running there and doing some great stuff at work.
Yep.
I was wanting to buy a house, move into the country and get a garden, and all these expectations that were...
So kind of everything's going on that, right?
Yeah, but my trajectory in my head is going up and up and up. And then obviously the relationship falls apart and everything changes, right?
So was that one of the cards in the deck, was it?
Oh, for sure. And it's not just that changes my mindset around Iceland. It's, then rather than, I'm thinking I'm going to buy a house, I think I'm going to sell my flat and just move back to my parents.
Right.
It's my work. I've got to take time off because I can't handle taking a jump when my mind's over here.
So it's the impact, actually, the knock-on effect of all this.
It's huge. And if we skip ahead to something that's also really important, is that ultimately I didn't complete Iceland, right? And you know this, but basically I made it almost exactly halfway around to a town called for any Icelanders listening, I apologize, but to a town called Egilsstaðir, which is on the west coast of Iceland. So almost exactly halfway around, but I sustained a knee injury where the last 3 days I was resting more, taking a lot longer to do what I was needing to do. So I'd torn my patella tendon, not seriously, not like a snapping where you're not going to be able to walk, but I couldn't cycle standing down. I couldn't cycle standing up.
There was no choice. Right?
There was no choice.
Yeah.
And I'd spent 3 days trying to force a choice, which was only making it worse.
And for the record, that's still 500 miles that you covered, right?
Yeah. So it was, 500 miles in 5 days of cycling. Yeah. So it was still, and that's why my knee gave up. It despite all the training.
Yeah.
You can't account for injury, I guess. And this was definitely a bigger volume than I'd ever done before. So
So all these things
all
are
these,
happening.
yeah. So I managed to jump over the first hurdle of my relationships just falling apart.
Yeah.
To saying, let's complete this anyway, because I've got to. There's no choice.
Yeah.
To getting halfway around and realizing I can't do this. Like I physically can't finish this. Getting back to Reykjavik was an ordeal in itself, but just a mess of Icelandic public transport, which is not set up for, which is fine. It's not designed for somebody with a bike in Ingolstadt to get back to Reykjavik with their bike. Anyone listening who wants to cycle in Iceland, if you're going to cycle in Iceland, make sure you can cycle. Do not ever expect to be able to take your bike anywhere, because it is extremely difficult.
Wow.
And you're going to be hard pressed for always getting the one bus a day or a week even that there is from wherever you are to back to civilization. So yeah, don't take a bike to Iceland that you can't cycle. That's a big thing. But all these things adding up just kept hitting me. And I remember the phone call that I had with my parents and my brother. I FaceTimed them from Ingolstadt, just telling them like I can't do this anymore. And that was a really hard phone call to have. My brother knew about the relationship at that time. My parents didn't know.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things playing into kind of, because I don't want to tell, I don't want to tell everyone. I don't want to worry people and all this kind of stuff. So there was a lot of things knocking me for six. And then you realize I'm coming back now. Like, so now I've not even been, as we talked earlier, like I don't want to measure success by the outcome, but when you're down in the dark, you're only measuring success by the outcome.
Correct.
You can't think sensibly and rationally about, actually, no, I've done so much. I can't think, I've done 500 miles in 5 days. I can't think like that.
No, success is probably at that point just getting back to Reykjavik, and
Yeah.
then you start again. What does success look like getting back to Scotland, right?
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. You have to take it in small chunks.
Exactly. So I wasn't successful, and that was, puts you into another layer of darkness, where you just think everything is just collapsing around you just now, and then you're like, wow, now I'm going home to a life that I don't know what my life is anymore. I don't even know
The unknown.
Yeah. Like before I went to Iceland, I had all these expectations, and I could close my eyes and I could think of my future in 6 months, and I could see it very clearly of what it was. And, after that, close my eyes, I can't even see what tomorrow is. It's just shrouded in cloudness and cloud and darkness. There's nothing showing me what my future should be, because I just don't know what my now is.
And that's the big knocker, isn't it? Because it changes like that. It changes in an instant, right? And sometimes we make that change happen, but in your case, something else made that change happen. But all of a sudden, you're kind of the course of history, not through your choice, suddenly kind of deviates, right? And then you're into this, what the hell does this look like? I don't even know. I haven't even had time looking at this reality. So, I think this is a common, okay, nobody cycles round Reykjavik, right? But relationships break down.
It was halfway around Iceland, not just Reykjavik.
Sorry, Iceland. But relationships break down, financial troubles, work stuff. This is all kind of everyday life.
Yeah.
And people really struggle, and people are struggling now more than ever when you look at the state of all sorts of measurements and metrics, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's wars or energy prices or inflation or the political turmoil. I mean, the list just goes on. The climate change. I mean, it's just pretty bad all round. How do you find that branch? How did is it a process? So if you're looking for something specific, hidden in the snow, or it's not there, right? You have to do you have to build again?
Yeah, and I don't want to suggest that I have any or all of the answers.
Okay.
I can just kind of explain how it worked for me, right?
But the point is, you didn't wave the white flag, even with that sudden pivot, even with the unknown, even with the injury, even with and I'm sure you had a sense of failure at the time because
absolutely.
you wanted to complete it for the others, as you'd explained. All of that on top of you at the same time.
Yeah.
A lot of people, honestly, and I don't blame anyone for pulling the covers over their heads and just wanting the world to go away, right?
Well, I did.
Right.
I did, to be honest. Like,
Right.
so I just disappeared. We explained earlier who Andy was and how I know who I am.
Yeah.
that was gone. I didn't know who I was at that point. And I went up home, I went to my parents and I stayed at my parents and my brother's for 2 weeks, just
trying to heal, I guess.
Yeah, just not knowing I don't know what I did every day. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I wrote a lot.
Good.
Writing a lot really helped, actually. I wrote a lot of journaling my thoughts every single day. Negative and positive. There weren't very many positive thoughts at that point.
Yeah.
But you got to try and capture those if you can. Affirmations are really powerful, I think, and it's something I still try and do. I think on a daily basis, people can get lost in thinking that there's nothing positive happening to them. But like, oh, I had a warm shower today. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. And if you can affirm the really simple things, you're going to be so much happier.
It's interesting you say this, because this is person, right? So in our, and just bringing it back to the app, but we're working, we've got a 6-month roadmap, right, of features and functions and all sorts of aesthetics and design changes and everything else. One of those things is a daily win or an affirmation or a gratitude, right? And lots of people call it different things. But for us, that daily win is something so small. It can be, I had breakfast.
Yep.
Right? And if you can, this is my point, if you can cling on to something that you are in control of, and it can be the smallest of things, and I mean really small, it gives you a different perspective and a different outlook on the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and gives you hope for the rest of your life. And it sounds really ridiculous,
it's
right?
It's so powerful, though.
But it's really powerful.
It's super
right?
powerful.
And so you found that.
Yeah, and I don't like comparing situations, because I think it's a really dangerous thing to do.
Yes.
And one of the things I always, and this might sound silly to some people, one of the things I always think is that everyone's biggest problem is their biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's relative, right? So somebody might look from the outside and say, Paul's biggest problem is far bigger than Andy's biggest problem. But if they're both our biggest problem, does that really make a difference?
Correct.
Rationally, maybe it does, but it doesn't.
Yeah,
almost.
Agreed.
So that's why I don't like to compare things, because it's an individual thing. But the thing I find myself thinking is, if everyone in the world even chucked their problems into a pile, I would take mine back. I would take mine. I would say, yes, please. I'll have those problems just now, because seeing the problems that everyone else has got. Mine are definitely easier to deal with. I think affirmations play into that. Being warm showers, having breakfast. People don't have that.
No.
And especially even in this country just now, so many people are losing that. So being able to be present and understand that the shit may be hitting the fan. Try and find those tiny things. And it's easy for me to say, because I do have a lot of things to be very grateful for. And I know there are many people who have far less things to be easily grateful for. But that's what I try to hold on to and think about, go back to and reflect on where is Andy, who is Andy, and what is Andy. And one of the really interesting things I found is that I hadn't been Andy for actually quite a while. Before Iceland and before the demise of my expectations for my future, I hadn't been who I know I am, which leads into a lot of thoughts about maybe that plays into why things don't work out. But it was really interesting to reflect on that and find my way back to who really is Andy. And I think finding my way back to who I am has been the key to recovery, to feeling better, and to being more positive about what's happening, where I'm going. I say being positive about what's happened. I'm never going to be positive about what's happened since July, but I can be positive about the way that I am now, and how I've journeyed through that recovery of it's really some. And you know that I love the gym, right? For me, the hardest I ever work is in physical endeavors. I am very much I will do my job to my best, but I'm not a careerist, right? I'm not somebody who's going to give their life up for their career. I will do a good job, and I will make sure that I can have a lifestyle that I want. But what I will give stuff up for is making sure that I can be as physically good as I can be. I was a day away from quitting my gym. So my gym membership was coming to an end. I wasn't going to renew it, and I renewed it. And ever since then, I've been in the gym 5 days a week, every single week for the past, 3 months. I feel so great. And I feel great, right?
Yeah. I can tell you're in a better place because of the amount of abuse I get for the football.
Yeah.
So I can tell you're in a much better place.
Yeah.
And part of that's the gym and the physicality of it, right?
And it's, the gym is relevant to me, but it's the part of that is I reflected on who am I, right? Who was Andy, and how can I find the Andy again that was really happy and driven and able to do, able to be resilient and able to build a future for themselves. And it was in things like the affirmations, the gym. We spoke about it before when we met up this morning. You very, very nicely commented on how I was dressed, and we spoke about this, and that, when you're in the depths, and even before then, I would just sit in my trackies, and there's nothing wrong with sitting in trackies, but I wouldn't shower. I would sit in my trackies. I wouldn't make an effort, and that propagates itself in many aspects of life.
Yep.
And now every day I'm going to get up, I'm going to get dressed, casual, smart, do my hair, make myself feel like I am being productive and actually presenting myself in a way that I think is more positive.
And that's sort of getting back a sense of purpose, purposefulness, isn't it?
So it's all tiny steps, I think, and these aren't the answers for everyone.
No.
But I think if you can practice self-reflection and really get good at it, I say I'm lucky. We started off the top of the podcast. I'm lucky. I feel like that comes very naturally to me. It doesn't mean I always get it right, by the way. It just means that I can reflect, but I can also reflect on when I'm being a dick, which is all the time.
I can confirm that. I can confirm.
And hopefully make changes to do less of that. But
because we're all changing, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe one of the reflections I have going back, I don't know, 10, 20 years, is that life seemed to be far more black and white for me then.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward 10, 20 years, and I realise it's really not like that. And the Paul Hutchinson that existed 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, there's constant evolution and change happening through relationships, through learned experience, through new information, constantly changing and adapting to life around you. And I would still say that I'm still, again, the embodiment of myself, but I think you have to recognize, and maybe it took me a little bit longer than it should have done, but I think change is an important aspect of life in terms of the way that you have to adapt and flex. Mm-hmm. So again, when I talk about simple, the simplistic view of life I had, everything was very much, not everything, I'm oversimplifying it, but things were either there or there, and that there was no in between. It was either that or that, and if you were good, that was the embodiment of that, or the reflection of that. And if you were bad, then this is what that looked like, and there was nothing in between. And now, what a load of baloney!
Yeah, what crazy way to think about the world, right?
And it almost makes me cringe, really, looking back at some of those thoughts. And I was, the conviction behind them.
Yeah.
Solid.
It was there, right?
Solid. And I would have stood up and made myself look more of an idiot by really kind of supporting those views. And I guess the softening of those has been a really interesting part of my life as I've got kind of older.
Yeah, but also the fact. So you just talked about there yourself. You've been self-reflecting, like in this past minute.
Much,
you've been just describing how you've been self-reflecting on what you used to be like and what Paul's like now. And
it's the same Paul.
It's super powerful.
Yeah.
It's super powerful because you can look at the way that you thought before, and then if you can understand what's led to now, mm-hmm. you can allow yourself to not be swayed so much by those impacts in the future because you understand it's all been a journey.
Yeah.
I've adapted from here to here.
Yeah.
I can adapt from here to here. And I can understand and I can work through this via that self-reflection of knowing at the core who I am, but you got to adapt to the times as well, though.
Well, with all the guests, I think we've touched upon this one thing, and I'm interested to see your answer on it. Is self-reflection needs or necessitates quality time, really to work through all of the thoughts, all of the possibilities, all of the rights and wrongs of history in your own life and all of the opportunities moving forward, but it needs quality time. And I can't help but think time is one of the resources that, if you look across our societies, and I'm talking globally, it's one of the commodities that really is not valued, and actually one of the most precious commodities we all have. And we choose to do things in that time, and everyone has their own prerogative really to do whatever they want, but when you look at the way society is using time, it genuinely saddens me. Like I genuinely get sad, but I can't get sad on behalf of other people, right? Because that's a poor quality, I think. But I think being reminded of that and literally stopping, putting that pause into your life so you can actually reflect on a regular basis, I think is so vital. And it's not something that I considered 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I don't know if I often... I don't set aside time to reflect.
Okay. It just happens naturally for you.
It just happens at moments when I think I need it, I guess.
Yep.
Which maybe isn't the best way to do it, because it means I'm only reflecting when there's a stimuli to say, oh, something needs to change, or something needs to adapt here. I think it's probably far more beneficial and consistently beneficial to probably set aside that time. So maybe something I should do more of. But I think you're right. Our use of time is so... I think it's disconnected from the reality of our finite availability of time, because especially me, obviously I'm getting older, but I'm still quite young. You just don't think about some point times. I think I remember when we first met, and I was 22, 23, and you always used to say, like, I don't even know I'm born. And I still don't feel like I still probably don't know I'm born compared to you, but I definitely know more than I was before.
Yeah.
And I'm aware now more of the fact that things don't stick around forever, and you need to be aware of that when you're going into anything, and aware of that with the decisions that you make every day. And that's I'm not great at saying, well, I'm going to make the best decision every day. Every decision I make today is going to be the best decision based on the fact that I've only got a certain amount of time here. In fact, I say I'm awful at that. I love wasting time, but that doesn't mean that I don't know that there's a better way to do things, probably, and that in the moment there are decisions where times when I could say, actually, this is a better way of using my my time. And one of the things that I think we always get stopped by is fear of failure, fear of rejection. I know that, again, this is something that people will say all the time, but when you remember that you're only here for 60, 70, 80 years, just forget it.
Yeah, just get on with it.
Just
right?
get on with it. Yeah. If you're thinking about talking to a random person in the street, just do it.
Yeah.
You're never going to see them again.
No.
And if you do, and if you don't, what's the worst that's going to happen?
One of the things that gives me the biggest pleasure, and I mean this genuinely, is like random acts of kindness. And I had one not so long ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and it sounds the stupidest thing. I'm saying it anyway, but somebody got off a train, and the doors were closing, and I looked, and they'd left their bag on the seat. And as the doors were closing, literally, I grabbed the bag. They realised and came back towards the doors, and I managed to get the bag through the doors.
Indiana Jones style.
And Indiana Jones style. The doors shut, and I will never forget this guy's face. As the train pulled away because we weren't able to talk. I will never forget the look of gratitude on that guy's face and his eyes. He just couldn't believe that had happened. And that was such a innocuous, small,
but
silly
it's
thing.
huge.
But for him, that was massive.
Well, for you, it's
massive.
huge too. I think it would be huge for everyone, because how many other people saw that bag? Probably a few. Point people
I
saw
would
the bag
imagine so, absolutely.
and didn't act. And I'm not saying that they didn't act to just besmirch them. It's saying you see that kind of stuff every day. You see somebody who needs a small thing,
Yes.
and everyone just passes it by. And I do it. I do it too. You know what?
But they make the big differences, right?
Yeah,
I think.
exactly. Yeah, the times when somebody does something small, innocuous to help somebody else is huge for everyone.
Yep.
I think the reason we don't do it is because we're all scared of like genuine interactions.
Yes.
You're like, oh, it's a bit weird to just walk up to somebody and oh, what if it's not their bag? I don't know. We're scared of that. I don't know why that is. I don't think we have time to go into why that is. But we're scared of that, which means that every time that it happens, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
I had a few moments like that in Iceland where I met people who helped me when they had no reason to. In fact, I know we're at time.
Yep.
So this is a quite a tough story to tell actually. There is a Scottish cyclist called Rab Wardle, who recently passed away in his sleep. This was the day after he'd won was the Scottish what was the championship he won? Scottish Mountain Bike Championship, I think. And this is very recent, so you can look it up. Rab Wardle.
Yep.
Rab was a massive supporter of Tiny Changes, and Rab reached out to me on many occasions on Instagram when I was promoting the cycle to give me support, to give me feedback, and just to let me know like I think you're doing a great job leading up to Iceland. And when I was in Iceland, he was the first person every day to reach out to me and say, doing a great job, keep it up, smashing it, love reading about this. And he was the first person to reply to my story that I put up saying like I've had to quit, saying, do not worry, you've done a great job. This is going to feel like failure just now, but pick yourself up and go again and you'll be grand. He never met me. He didn't know who I was. He had no reason to reach out to me, but he did because it was the right thing to do and he thought it was the right thing to do. And despite never meeting him, his death moved me so much because of the person that I knew that he was, because of the way that he'd interacted with somebody who he had no reason to. He had no. It's like the bag thing. You had no reason to give them that. No. He had no reason to give me the support that he did, but he did because it's the right thing to do, and because he's a good person. So
if we all did a bit more of that, or tried to find opportunities to do a bit more of that, actually the difference we'd make would be
huge.
So
because it's not just the difference to the. I bet the guy who you gave the bag to. Probably did something great for somebody else because he remembered.
You think it's a pass it on thing, right?
Yeah. What's the saying? I can't remember. There's a term for it. Pay it forward.
Pay it forward.
There you go.
Right. Yeah.
If we go pay it forward more, it's a knock on, and everyone will be super happy.
That is a great place to end it. I don't know where the time's gone. I had a list of things I wanted to get through. There've been so many real nuggets in that conversation, and I genuinely believe that several of them will be absorbed and digested by the listeners, and they'll be super grateful you came in to talk about it. I think that was a challenging thing to talk about anyway. I'm super grateful again.
Thanks for having me. I really
thank you, Andy. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, Paul.
Cheers.
Great. Thank you.